Hey y'all, it's Mr. S, and this is Unit 2 of Environmental Science. And tonight we're going over Evolution and Adaptation 2.5. So today's objective is for you to be able to describe how organisms adapt to their environment in many different ways. And to understand that organisms adapt to their environment over time, both in short and long-term scales, via incremental changes at the genetic level, and to understand that environmental changes, either sudden or gradual, may threaten a species' survival, requiring individuals to alter behaviors, move, or perish. And we're going to look at some data analysis at the end, and you're going to practice describing relationships among variables and data represented. All right, so all populations have some genetic diversity or variability in genomes of individuals. Genomes are the genes, all the DNA that create the physical traits that you have in your cells. And then genetic diversity exists in the first place for a few reasons. First of all, random mutations happen while the DNA is being copied to create new traits. So for example, this is the strand of DNA that's being copied. If you remember from biology last year, all of our cells are getting copied all the time, and that's how we create new babies. If just this one nucleotide got changed or swapped with a C, it would be enough to change the whole organism. And if that was an advantageous change, then that could be the trait that survives in those animals. Okay, so adaptation comes from genetic mutations that allows the population to survive and reproduce more easily. And then the other way that genetic changes happen are through crossing over in parent chromosomes during meiosis. Remember, meiosis is when we create sex cells, so eggs and sperm, which have half of our DNA. And when this happens and a new baby is being created, the chromosomes cross over and traits change. And this is is responsible for a lot of the genetic diversity that we see. So those are the two ways that we see new traits arise, and some of them will take root and stay. They will stay in the world and continue to be passed on. So adaptation is a new trait that increases an organism's fitness or ability to survive and reproduce. All right, so adaptation and natural selection. Natural selection is when organisms that are better adapted to their environment survive and reproduce with more offspring. Individuals with adaptations that pass them on to offspring, and individuals without adaptations die off, which lead to the entire population having the adaptation over time. That's called evolution, and I'm about to give you an example. So if there's a selective pressure or force, like the environmental conditions that kill individuals without the adaptation, right? So for example, there's a mice and they live on this beach with black sand, right? And so some mice are eaten by birds on a regular basis. And these white mice are more likely to get eaten by the birds. So over many generations, the mice are becoming more black over time because they're more camouflaged. So the bird would be the selective force, and this would be natural selection happening over time. So over long periods of time, eventually the genes are changing. Then we have environmental change in evolution. So the environment an organism lives in determines which traits are adaptations. For example, as environments change, different traits may become adaptations, and old traits may become disadvantages. So for example, a drought can kill off finches with smaller beaks, making larger beaks for cracking harder seeds in adaptation. So this is a real thing that happened, right? In the Galapagos Island in Ecuador, they were measuring the beak depth of these finches, or Daphne birds, over a period of time. So this is the percentage of individuals in each depth class, in each size of beak. And we had a major drought in 1977, and you could see that the depth or the width of the beak went up, because the birds with smaller beaks were disproportionately affected by the drought. So you're seeing that over time the environmental changes change how animals adapt to their environment. So the more rapidly an environment changes, the less likely a species in the environment will be adapted to those changes. So for example, if the pace of environmental change is too rapid, many species may migrate out of their environment or die off completely. For example, if the ocean warms too quickly, many species of fish may not be able to migrate before they run out of oxygen and suffocate, if it's not gradual enough. The more genetic diversity in a population, the better they're able to adapt to environmental change. So the higher chance that some individuals have good mutations. So if there's a really diverse population with lots of different traits, lots of different genetics, they're not all the same, then if something happened, there'd more likely be some traits that would allow survival. A good example of this is the lizards that have blue tails here in Albuquerque. They're all females. They reproduce asexually, and they're all basically the same lizard. Their genetic diversity is extremely low. So if anything happened to them that was that they couldn't adapt to, they would die off very easily. And finally, there's lifespan. So the longer the lifespan of the organism, the slower the rate of evolution. So for example, bacteria and viruses can adapt and evolve in days. That's why we have antibiotic-resistant bacteria, right? Because they reproduce so quickly. But humans' evolution is thousands to millions of years, because we change really slowly. We reproduce really slowly. All right, make sure you pause the video and take notes, and if you need to pause the video and go back, please do. All right, so all of this happened with the theory of natural selection developed by Charles Darwin. You may have heard of him. He was the first one to figure out that species might change over time based on these factors that happen over long periods. And so there's a difference between fitness and adaptation. Fitness is the differential ability to survive and reproduce, and adaptation is any behavioral or physical characteristic that increases fitness. Okay, so they sound really similar, and they are, but fitness is like the actual trait that you have that's helping you. For example, a white rabbit that blends in with the snow. And the adaptation is anything that's going to increase that chance. So let's say rabbits that were white were surviving more, then there would be more white rabbits. They would be adapting. So the theory of natural selection, there's a struggle for existence among organisms. So remember, organisms, obviously, they struggle for food, habitat, mates. This is competition. There is physical and behavioral variation in living organisms. For human variation, we have eye color, skin color, height, weight, facial hair, intelligence, nose size. Dogs, you can think of dog breeds. And organisms with higher fitness or more helpful adaptations are more likely to survive. It's the survival of the fittest. So you can see this is actually a bird that blends in perfectly with the camouflage at birth. And what are the lion's adaptations? Well, yeah, sharp teeth, coloration, excellent eyesight at night. And over time, a natural selection will ensure that certain characteristics appear more and more often as they are passed through generations. Entire species can change over time in this way. So you can see the killer whales. They used to look like a freaking tiger over here. Look at that, how much it's changed over millions of years. And then there's common descent, right? So every living species has descended with changes from other species over time. So we're all related in the tree of life. All right, pause the video and put these words in order to make 3 statements that summarize natural selection. All right, genes mutate, individuals survive and reproduce, and populations evolve. It can only happen in that order, so write it out in the right order. And so why are humans successful? Walking upright can use arms and see farther. We have opposable thumbs for grabbing things. And we have big brains for being awesome, obviously. So why can't humans evolve to cope with our new environmental conditions? What do you think? Well, genes for our new traits have to already be present in a population's gene pool through random mutation. And our generation times are too long to keep up with rapidly changing human conditions. We aren't fruit flies or bacteria. It takes thousands of years for us to evolve to our environment. All right, we're wrapping up here, and here are some myths about evolution. These are untrue statements. So number 1, fitness means stronger, faster, or bigger. No, because sometimes the slowest animals have the high fitness, like a slow metabolism, or small ones can hide more easily. Fitness can mean different things in different environments. Organisms develop new traits in order to help them in their environment. Well, that's not exactly true either. Genes mutate randomly. The ones that get passed on are going to be the helpful ones. So the organisms have the traits first. They are not developed in response to the environment. It's kind of just a random crapshoot. Lastly, evolution is a constant progression towards some perfection. Evolution is random, and environmental situations change, what is helpful will also change. So there's no perfect goal for them to evolve to. It's just a random process that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. All right, so this is in your packet, and the skill that we're practicing today is data analysis. And so this data table shows the beak size of 20 finches from 2 different islands in the Galapagos. Describe the difference in the beak size between the 2 islands and make a claim about the reason for this difference in beak size. So you're going to describe it and make a claim based on this data. What can you interpret? All right, thank you for tuning in. See you next time.